All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, YouTubers. YouTubers singular, since there's only one of you out there maybe that ever listens to me. Yeah, I'm not feeling terribly encouraged, people. Seems like nobody cares. I know it just seems that way. So there are people out there that care. There's an army out there, an army of faith, but an army of light, an army of salt. Let your light so shine before men that it be seen by all men. Don't put your light under a basket. And if the salt has lost its savor, it's good for nothing to be trod under the foot of men. People think salt's not good for plants. That's not true. You can never put enough seawater on a garden that you could drown it. You hurt it. It would just grow bigger and bigger fruit and bigger vegetables. Spray all the seawater you want on your garden. All right. Anyway, so I'm on to chapter 19. Speaking of Army of Darkness, Into the Mouth of Darkness. I almost said Army of Darkness. That was a crazy movie by that title by some guy that always has something like a '67 Pontiac or something in it. Falls out of the sky or whatever. So, all right. Anyway, here we go. Into the Mouth of Darkness. John's mind raced with questions almost as fast as the spirit flyer soared through the air. The old red bike chose its own speed. John held on firmly to the handlebars, with his feet resting on the pedals. Suddenly, without warning, the spirit flyer shot ahead faster. John heard a high-pitched hum, and a blur of colors flashed before his eyes. Then everything was the same as before. He went to light speed, teleportation. I talked to one man that happened to. He had to be somewhere, and he prayed that he'd be there, and 20 minutes later he was there. He went into a daze and traveled about 300 miles in 2 minutes or something when he woke up. He was still riding high in the air, but the scenery had changed. The sky above him was covered with gray rain clouds, and Centerville was just ahead. The spirit flyer had carried the boy 250 miles in the blink of an eye. Entirely possible, people, entirely possible. John was surprised, but he let the old red bike choose its own way. At the edge of town, the bike glided down to the street for a smooth landing. John wanted to pedal to the sheriff's office, but since the spirit flyer kept moving by itself, he decided to just keep riding. I gotta get some light, sorry. I like to turn this one on because it kind of shines in the camera, but oh well. Too bad, so sad. Okay. At the edge of town, the bike glided down to the street for a smooth landing. John wanted to pedal to the sheriff's office, but since the spirit flyer kept moving by itself, he decided to just keep riding. A few minutes later, the old red bike rolled up to the doorway of the Kramer house and stopped at the garage door. John hopped off to open the door. The bike rolled into the garage by itself, stopping in front of the tall metal shelves. Outside, rain began to fall in a miserable drizzle, the same kind of rain that had caused the floods. John looked at the rain and felt a stab of fear. And from that fear, more fear flooded into him. In fact, as soon as he had gotten off the spirit flyer, he began to worry about Susan and the family. John looked up at the cardboard box filled with the old broken bicycle instruments and remembered what his grandfather had said. "I'd better see who's home first," he said softly, then ran into the house. "Uncle Bill, Aunt Betty, they have Susan and maybe—" But the boy stopped, feeling the eerie silence and smelling a strange smell, the smell of something dead. The whole house seemed as if it had been abandoned for months. John ran from room to room, only to find the next room more empty than the first one before it. The phone in the kitchen was off the hook, dangling lifelessly on the cord. John started to put it on the hook when suddenly the phone screamed and began to glow. "Help us, John. They have us all. Dad, Mom, and the girls. You must save us. Come quick, right away, to the old dump. John, we need—" But Susan's words were drowned out in a terrible, horrible scream. John dropped the glowing phone as if it were on fire. It swayed in the dead silence. The boy sat down at the kitchen table. His heart pounded and his legs felt weak, as if he couldn't stand. He was so afraid he couldn't think. Too much has happened. The deeper world, demons, diamonds. The dead smell in the empty house. His mind blurred. The loneliness of the house filled him. Then John saw the note lying on the kitchen table, written in slashes of thick red ink. To John Kramer, into the mouth of darkness fly, above the clouds, above the sky. 2 red fangs and 2 red eyes. Come in quickly, or they all will die. There you go back to his dream of flying into the mouth of the snake. John read the note again. What could it mean? Susan had said to go to the old dump. Was that a trick? Her voice sounded so real, it must have been Susan, the boy thought. But what did Grandfather Kramer say? Put those old instruments on that he had taken off the spirit flyer. In his fear, the boy had almost forgotten. I must save them, John said. He ran out to the garage. The spirit flyer was leaning against the metal shelves. John reached high and grabbed the cardboard box. The old broken light, the cracked mirror, the gear lever, the old rubber horn, and the generator were all still there, along with the old black inner tubes. The slingshot, John thought, used heavy scissors. He quickly cut 2 long strips of rubber from one of the inner tubes. He tied the ends to the slingshot. Then he tied the bands to the leather pouch. The slingshot was ready. But what about rocks or bullets or something for the slingshot? John asked. Grandpa didn't give me anything to shoot. What good is an empty slingshot with those creatures or even people? John threw the slingshot down on the workbench in disgust. He stared at all the old instruments in the box. They're all broken and useless, the boy said. Grandpa must have thought they were in better shape, and I don't have time. Susan said to come right away. John had an idea. He suddenly ran back into the house to his aunt and uncle's bedroom. He saw it in the top of the dresser, the gun his uncle used as sheriff. The revolver weighed more than he remembered. I'm trying to speak clearly, sorry. But he quickly strapped it around his waist. Outside, a brilliant flash split the sky, followed by a clap of thunder. The rain came down harder. John ran through the house back into the garage. He felt stronger with the gun on his hip, like a Western gunfighter. He hopped on the spirit flyer and pushed with his foot, but the bike wouldn't roll. He pushed harder. Come on, John said. We don't have much time. But the old red bike would not budge. But for an instant, John thought of riding Susan's bike to the dump. He pushed. Well, that'd be really intelligent, wouldn't it? Yeah, don't fly. He pushed once more with his foot. The spirit flyer seemed glued to the ground. He knew the bike wasn't moving for a reason, yet he was too scared and in too much of a hurry to try to understand why. He pushed again, but nothing happened. What's wrong? John asked impatiently. At that moment, he saw the slingshot lying on the workbench. He looked at the sign of the 3 crowns burned into the handle. Okay, I'll take it, he said, as if answering someone. He grabbed the slingshot and hung it on the handlebars. Then he noticed the cardboard box with the bicycle instruments. I don't have time to put them on. Besides, they're broken. I've got Uncle Bill's gun. Yippee-ki-yay. We do not war against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and spiritual wickedness in high places. I'm not going to shoot a demon with a gun. That's where a lot of people are going to have it so wrong. They got all this gun and ammunition, but they got nothing to shoot at except for human bodies. Stupid, stupid, stupid. John pushed with his foot, and the old red bike finally moved forward, but very slowly, as if it were stuck in a puddle of gooey tar. He looked back at the cardboard box. The old broken instrument seemed to beg to be put on the bicycle. Yet John kept pushing until he reached the garage door. I just don't have time, he said, pushing so hard his leg ached. At that moment, the old red bicycle rolled easily out into the driveway. Good, John said, feeling a sigh of guilt. Then he looked up and saw the angry black clouds and the ugly rain. His fears returned. The day almost seemed like night. It was so dark. Then somewhere far away, lost out in the rain, John thought he heard someone call his name. But who could be calling him? The voice sounded odd. Then it was gone. Lightning flashed, followed by thunder. John shivered. His pajamas were getting wet. I should have changed into regular clothes, he said, but before he could go back inside, the spirit flyer rolled down the driveway, taking off into the air before it reached the street. John forgot about his wet pajamas and held on. The old red bike gained speed, flying higher over the quiet streets of Centerville. The rain seemed heavy, as it forced the bike to go slower. But at the outside of town, as it passed over the Sleepy Eye River, the bike sped up, turning in the direction of the old dump. John felt better when the bike went faster, but at that moment he heard a terrible roar and a brilliant flash blinded his eyes. The bike jerked to one side. The air smelled of hot electricity. Lightning. Far below, an old dead tree began to burn. John shivered. The lightning had just missed him. Then he was jerked to the other side as another bolt went by in an instant. Later, with a tremendous boom. The flash of light was so strong that John couldn't see for a few seconds, though it seemed longer. He held on blindly to the handlebars. The old red bike picked up speed, racing toward the dump in the increasing rain. John held on tightly. Then straight ahead, through the hard rain, John saw the source of the lightning. Two large red eyes stared out of the black clouds, but one cloud was darker and swirled like a tornado. John knew it wasn't a cloud at all. As he raced closer, the snake became clearer, taller than a skyscraper as it hovered over the old dump. John pushed back on the brake of the Spirit Flyer. The snake opened its terrible mouth. The red fangs glistened like wet blood. A flash leaped from the snake's mouth. John closed his eyes, gripping the handlebars. The old red bike jumped straight up as a thunderous roar of lightning passed beneath his feet. The boy felt the heat through his slippers. Yet the Spirit Flyer kept moving forward. John opened his eyes. The snake was gone. He blinked and looked again, but only saw dark clouds. He was exactly over the old dump. Then he heard it high above him. Lost in the clouds, a tiny distant voice called his name. John! John! The voice died away. The Spirit Flyer suddenly tilted up and sped straight for the dark, angry clouds. As the bike entered the clouds, the boy was blinded by the mist. Again he heard someone calling his name twice. The voice was higher, far above him. Just before he broke through the clouds, John finally realized what was happening. This was just like his dream, only this time he wasn't safe in his bed. As he burst through the brilliant sky above the clouds, far off to his right, he saw it, coiled and waiting in terrible splendor. The large tornado snake. The white circled X gleamed on his black throat, and his mouth was wide open. John automatically pushed back on the brakes, but the Spirit Flyer raced toward the monstrous serpent. John, the tiny voice called, but this time it was louder. Then, to his horror, he realized the voice was coming from inside the serpent. The large red eyes glared at him. The red fangs oozed blood. John remembered the note on the kitchen table. Into the mouth of darkness fly. A flash of lightning streaked from the dark mouth, but the lightning passed to John's left. Again the snake, like a legless dragon, spit fire. Lightning sizzled to the boy's right. The snake was teasing him. Another bolt flashed over his head. The Spirit Flyer sped faster toward the waiting mouth of the snake. And as the bike got closer, John began to realize how gigantic this serpent really was. The sky disappeared in unimaginable darkness as the mouth stretched wider and wider. John pushed back on the brake several times, but the old bike only went faster toward the giant hole of a mouth. The wheels of the Spirit Flyer weren't even turning anymore. The giant serpent was sucking him into the deeper darkness. John felt powerless. A loud hissing noise hurt his ears. High above him, he saw the evil point of a red, glistening fang coming down toward him. The mouth was closing. The bike was sucked in deeper. The boy looked back and saw the beautiful blue sky disappearing. Then the mouth shut on a cold, terrible darkness. The deeper darkness in the realm of increasing death passed right into the boy like a chilled breath. He felt suffocated. He coughed, trying to free himself, but the darkness increased. He thought the bike was still flying forward, but he wasn't sure. He wasn't even sure his eyes were open, yet he felt things pass by him. Weightless whispers of things seemed to touch him. John gripped the handlebars of the Spirit Flyer tighter. The throbbing, hissing noise became louder and louder as John went deeper. He wanted to cover his ears, but he was afraid to let go of the handlebars. As he went even deeper, he began to smell a horrible dead smell, the breath of the serpent. The same dead smell that was in his uncle's house and at the dump the day he found the Spirit Flyer. John flew deeper. The noise increased, as did the smell of death in the terrible cold darkness. The boy tried to scream, but his breath was sucked from his mouth deeper into the darkness. I'm going to die, John thought. There's no air here. I can't breathe. I'm going to die. The old bike kept speeding forward through the black hole of death to a world of rotting graves. The darkness seemed to be sucking all the life from the boy's body. The noise was deafening. No, John screamed finally. Then it was over. John felt air rush into his lungs. The noise was gone. The Spirit Flyer had stopped. John put his foot down. The ground, or whatever it was, seemed soft like a sponge, yet firm underneath. The boy took several deep breaths. When he looked down, he noticed that he could see once again, but barely. A cool blue light made his hands look pale, dead. The light came from a thin crack in the darkness. As John moved closer, he saw the crack was at the bottom of a door. John, a voice called out weakly from the other side of the door. Ah, cliffhanger. Okay, too bad, so sad. I'm done. Good night. Let me see if anybody's on going to say anything. It's going to be the usual no call, no show. See if Zapton's on. Zapton Kaboom. Hey, bud. How you doing? God bless. So I'm going to sign out, so good night. Thank you for listening. My one listener. Okay, bye-bye.